All
So
right.
you got to mail that trophy out, huh?
Huh? What's that?
You got to mail that trophy out.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, the guy who won it is local. So,
Oh, okay.
oh, whoops, I can't do that. I just minimized. No minimize. No minimize. Let's move that over here. All right. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 32 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here once again with Steve. How's it going tonight, Steve?
Going great, Wayne. Good to be with you. Good to talk hockey. Looking forward to this. Will be a chock full of information podcast for both of us.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Of course, regular season is over. Playoffs are starting actually as we speak in about 90 minutes from now because we're recording tonight on Wednesday, opening night of the playoffs. And games start at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we just hit the record button. It's about 5:30. Well, a little bit before 5:30 right now. So we've got a lot to talk about. But before we get going on the NHL, AHL, and all the other news of the week, there's been a very sad event that has happened in the hockey world. And before I get going talking about this event, I looked into, or I've listened to a lot of the other podcasts that I'm subscribed to, hockey-related podcasts this week, just looking to see how some of the other podcasts are handling this particular story. And, it ranges the gamut from not talking about it at all to talking about it at great lengths. Now, of course, some of these podcasts I listen to are specifically focused on one team only. So understandably, I understand if they didn't talk about it much. But we, of course, are a podcast that focuses on all hockey, not just NHL, but all levels of hockey. So this is a big story for us, and we do need to talk about it. And that is, of course, the tragedy that happened up in with the Humboldt Broncos up in Saskatchewan. And if you're a hockey fan, you obviously know about this story. And if you don't know about this story and you've been living under a rock or haven't been paying attention to hockey, basically the general gist of the story is a bus carrying the Humboldt Broncos, a junior team in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. That's a Tier A or an A, Junior A hockey team, which is basically the highest level of hockey in Canada that you can play and still retain NCAA eligibility. And those Junior A leagues are popular for that reason, for players that want to come to the U.S. and play college. If they go to the major juniors, they can't play college. So this Junior A team out of Humboldt, Saskatchewan, was on their way to a road game, and their bus crashed. It collided with a tractor-trailer truck. 29 people on board the bus, 15 passed away, 14 hospitalized. And as of the recording of this podcast, 11 are still in the hospital tonight. So very, very terrible scene there in Humboldt. And this particular story I've been watching very closely. It's pretty much fallen out of the news cycle here in the U.S. almost completely. Even the hockey news and the sports news. Nobody's talking about it down here anymore because, hockey's a pretty minor sport in the grand scheme of things here in the U.S. You got the NBA playoffs coming up and the NFL draft and all kinds of other stuff going on. So, but in Canada, this is very much a major news story, and they're very much talking about it still. And it hit me pretty hard, this story, because I've been in their shoes. I was a hockey player once. I traveled the buses once when I was in, the highest level of hockey that I played was high school in Vermont. And of course, I've been on that bus. I'm from a town roughly the same size as Humboldt. So I can feel what's going on there in that small town. And it really has devastated that town. They've lost 15 kids, and they're just kids. That's, they're 15 to 20 years old. these kids. And so, I've been in those players' shoes. I've ridden the buses. I've played in the leagues, and it was just a very tough story for me to see, and to see all the tributes going on around the NHL. Saturday was pretty much the biggest day for all of that, because every team was in action that day except for the Pittsburgh Penguins. That was the final day of the regular season for most teams, and to see all the tributes was very heart-touching, but all in all, it was a tough day. But to see some of the stuff coming out of it is there's a lot of good news coming out of it. It's very inspiring to see some of that stuff coming out of it. You've had responses from basically every team in the NHL has sent all kinds of stuff their way, anywhere from money to, for one, the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames head coaches, Todd McClellan and Glenn Gulletson, personally went to Humboldt because they both have roots in Saskatchewan, so they're very familiar with that league in that area, to lend their personal support. Sheldon Kennedy, who survived the bus accident that killed 4 people back in 1986, a very similar situation. He was a member of the junior team and heading up to a game, and their bus crashed, and 4 people lost their lives in that one. And he's been a major support for the families of all the Humboldt players, because he's been through what they're going through now. So he's done a very good job at supporting those. And the best news that I've seen out of all of this is the GoFundMe page. I don't know if you've seen this, Steve.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
But they, a person that's in the community, the Humboldt community that's close to the team, has almost immediately created a GoFundMe to raise money for the families of those affected. And not only the families, the immediate families of the players involved, but the billet families as well, because, these kids are living, a lot of these kids are not even from Humboldt. They're from other parts of Saskatchewan. There's some from Manitoba. There's some from Alberta even. And these kids travel to Humboldt and live with, almost like foster families kind of thing for while they're playing there. And so those families are affected. And I remember seeing one story of one particular family that lost 3 players they were billeting. They had living with them. And so, it's a very, very sad situation. And very tough to see the news coming out of there. But the GoFundMe page to date, I just checked it a little while ago, has raised over $8.6 million for the families.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it's great.
So, and they're going to need it. There's some of these players, some of the players that survived, it's not just to help with the burial costs of the ones that deceased, but there's one player in particular that they've talked about that is paralyzed, and he's going to need a lot of support. And every one of these players that is still in the hospital today. I mean, this thing happened almost a week ago now, and with 11 out of 14 still in the hospital, these are major injuries. These are severe injuries and not only the physical toll, but the mental toll that these players and the support that all the families are going to need. So this money is going to be very nice, and the money keeps pouring in. That number keeps going up every day. And the money is coming from everywhere. If you look at the list, you can see a list of the people that have donated. It's come from corporations. It's come from teams in the NHL, teams in other minor leagues, individual NHL players. I've seen a number of NHL players putting in $10,000, $5,000, $1,000 here. That all that stuff adds up, and just to see the people all over the hockey community supporting the Broncos in this situation has been very heartwarming to see the response. And there's also for those who are unable to financially contribute to the cause, there's also kind of a gesture that's been going around the internet that is kind of gone viral, and that is, and I don't even know who started it. I think it started with one of the former players of the team. There's a put your sticks out for Humboldt campaign going on right now. Basically, what everybody is doing, everybody who's in the hockey community that has hockey sticks have been putting their hockey sticks outside their front door. And basically, the message there is, you know, for the players that are deceased, to give them, give them that kind of support. Say, hey, you're leaving your stick out for the players in case they need it, wherever they are.
Right.
So I've put my sticks out. In fact, I've got a couple more sitting right here behind me.
Man.
So it's just a sad situation.
Yeah, that is. I actually got a news flash on my cell phone. I think it was Sunday. It was Saturday night or Sunday morning. I think it was. I can't remember what, but I didn't know about it until then, and read about it, and it was tragic. You turn on TV, and actually the first story they were talking about. So, really, a terrible thing that's happened, and my heart goes out to the community and, of course, hockey in general. I know, there's quite a few good hockey players come out of Saskatchewan, and so I'm sure that it's touched everybody. That's not a immensely populated province.
No, it's not
in Canada. So something like this really would devastate not only the community but the whole province of Saskatchewan and the surrounding areas because of something like that. But certainly wish the best. It's going to take time, Wayne.
Yep.
For this, so it'll take time.
Yeah, and there is actually, there was another thing I found out a couple of days ago too. There's a couple of YouTube channels that I've been following closely. Just people that I enjoy watching on YouTube. There's two channels in particular. One of them is the Hockey Guy, and the other one is Post to Post. These are two channels that have a pretty vibrant community behind them. Both channels have over 30,000 subscribers each. And both channels let everybody know this week that one person who is a subscriber to both channels was on that bus. He's the 15-year-old team statistician, Brody Hines. He was a regular contributor to both channels. And basically, but the way these two channels work, and they're both offer about the same, is they come on, they do videos many times a week. Some of these guys are doing several videos a day. And it's basically, they talk about a topic going on in the hockey world. You know, the Vigneault firing, the Jets making the playoffs. You know, every little topic, they create a video and then invite all their listeners or watchers to comment on the video, give them their thoughts, and just generally talk about everything that they talk about. It's basically a community of hockey fans just talking about the game, in a very positive way. And both these channels provide that. Well, both channel owners revealed this week that Brody Hines, 15-year-old team statistician for the Humboldt Broncos, who was on that bus, it was a regular contributor to both channels. He commented, in the case of Post to Post, he commented over 50 times on their videos. And in the case of the Hockey Guy, hundreds of times. No, he didn't give a specific number, but he was quite a regular contributor. And he's one of the 15 that didn't make it. So it hit those communities pretty hard. And, of course, I watch both channels on a regular basis, so that was very sad to see that as well. So, but yeah, my heart goes out to everybody involved with this whole thing. I feel terrible. I've been there. I know that I got no clue what these families are going through, but I can tell you I've been on that bus. It could have happened to me when I was that age. it could have happened to my kids. You know, I've coached as well, been on those buses as a coach. I've got 2 kids roughly the same age as those kids, so it just hit a little close to home for me, and it was a tough weekend to see the news coming out for me in particular, and I feel terrible for everybody involved.
I hear you.
Hopefully, hopefully better days are ahead for that town.
I agree. Agreed.
So, all right. Well, let's move on to some better news, shall we?
All right. Sounds good.
And we've got to talk first and foremost. Let's go ahead and wrap up the end of the regular season because 2 of our 3 teams have now finished their season. So we got to wrap up the end of their seasons in a bow, and then we'll get going on some of the playoff talk. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right, so we'll start with Carolina. They finished their season with a 4-3 loss at Philadelphia and a 3-2 overtime win against Tampa Bay. Now, that 3-2 overtime win versus Tampa Bay was important at the time because had Tampa Bay won that game, they would have sealed the Eastern Conference and basically knocked Boston down to the second place in the Atlantic standings. However, that ended up happening anyway because Boston couldn't seal the deal against Florida on Sunday, the next day. So, but at the time, it was good news for me in particular because it left the door open for Boston to take first place. So I thank the Carolina Hurricanes for that little bit of action last week. But other than that, it was just a quiet ending for the Carolina Hurricanes as their season comes to a close with a split week.
Right.
And the Rangers played even worse.
We played, yeah. It wasn't really a very pretty ending at all for us. As you know what happened, and I guess we're going to wait to get to the Vigneault firing as part of the transactions when we talk about that, but. To quickly end it, we lost on Thursday night. The score was 2-1 in a game that the Rangers scored near the end of the game, but it was a 2-0 game there for a while. I really think the firing was imminent. And I think it was obvious that was going to be something that was going to take place before the last game was ever played, and probably the entire month of April, maybe even into March. I think players kind of had a gut feeling that something was going to happen. But I'll get to that in a minute. Once behind against Philadelphia, it was really never a contest. They had a couple of opportunities to score. In fact, couple of real good opportunities to score first in that game. But once the score got to be 2-0, it was kind of a rout was on. I don't think their hearts were in that game whatsoever. And really, I don't
it looked like they weren't.
I don't think the players cared. I really don't. I don't think they cared at all. As I said, I think the news of his firing didn't surprise anybody. If you were a New York Rangers player, certainly didn't surprise me as a New York Rangers fan. And I know you want to talk about the Bruins, so we'll just end it like that, and we'll finish with Vigneault's firing in a minute.
All right, and yeah, as for the Bruins, they finished up the week. They had a 3-game week to end a brutal March / early April. Because they were so far behind on games played, they had to play a brutal schedule in March. And I think I saw a number where basically from the 1st of March through the end of the season, the Bruins played a game on average every 44 hours. So it was a brutal end to the season for the Bruins, and it showed on the ice this week as, of course, they're continuing to have injury problems, although they're starting to get healthy now. They finished the season with a 3-2 loss at Florida, a 5-2 win versus Ottawa, and then a 4-2 loss versus Florida on Sunday on that makeup game. And in that makeup game, going into that game, because They beat Ottawa, and because Carolina beat Tampa Bay, the Bruins had a chance going into that Florida game to win the division by just simply getting 2 points against Florida. And I don't know what the deal was in that game. I didn't get to see the game live. I kind of saw highlights of it after the fact. But it just looks like, they outshot Florida almost 2-1. So it looked like the effort was there. It just looked like they were out of gas. It was a case where the grueling schedule at the end of the season kind of showed. Yeah, they were getting the shots on net, but they weren't getting the hard drives. They weren't getting they just weren't getting any puck luck for one, and then
that's what I thought. I watched the end.
Yeah, and Florida was playing determined. They wanted to spoil Boston's chance at winning the division. And the thing that jumped out at me too is who they put in net for Florida. I'm not sure why they put Reimer in net, but it's kind of fitting that if you look back at the 2013 playoffs, when the Bruins in Game 7 of the first round against the Toronto Maple Leafs were down 4-1 with roughly 10 to 11 minutes left to go in the game, came back, tied the game, sent it to overtime, and then won the game in overtime. That game, Reimer was in net for Toronto. Right. So in this case, I think it was a bit of Reimer's revenge. He wanted to win that game bad.
Right.
To ruin Boston's chance at first overall, and then in doing so, avoiding the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round of the playoffs.
Right.
So ultimately, what happens is Boston loses, so now they play Toronto instead of New Jersey, and in my opinion, it's a much tougher road for Boston, having to go through Toronto than New Jersey.
Absolutely agree with you, Wayne. I agree with you 100%. I felt like, and I tuned in the game in the second period, I guess, the last game of the season on the 8th. But at one point, the shots were 21 or 22-2 in the third period in favor of the Bruins. Reimer was just stopping everything.
Yeah.
And nothing was going in the net for Boston. They had absolutely no breaks. And that was when the score was 3-2. I wouldn't even count that last goal. But Boston outplayed them completely in the third period.
Yeah.
But Florida won the game, and you got to give them credit. They showed up and wanted to play that game. They had a spoilers mentality, and they took it on the ice, and they weren't going to be denied.
Yep.
Which is something the Rangers could have done as well. Had the Rangers beat Philadelphia in regulation, the Florida would be in the playoffs.
Yep.
So, you saw two different teams in the Panthers and the Rangers on Saturday and Sunday, respectively.
Yeah, and that's just, I guess that's just the way things go in the end of the season. All right. So as for that, it was really only 5 games worth of or 5 days worth of games at the end of the season since we last recorded. So on the ice, there really hasn't been a whole lot going on because there hasn't been any games. Well, in reality, other than that one Boston-Florida game, there hasn't been any games in the NHL since Saturday. So
that's right.
We've been sitting around waiting since Saturday for NHL hockey, and thank God it starts tonight. So. So let's move on then to some of the news stories that have happened around the league before we talk about said playoffs. And first and foremost, we got to talk about some transactions. And at the top of my list is the Alain Vigneault firing. He was fired as the head coach of the Rangers on Saturday after 5 seasons. The Rangers finished last in the Metro this season and missed the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2009-2010. The Rangers were 226, 147, and 37 under Vigneault, who is 3rd in wins and 4th in games in New York history. They were 31-30 in the playoffs. He's 3rd all-time in playoff wins and games coached in Rangers history. They reached the Stanley Cup final in 2014, his first season, and got to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final in 2015. Rangers lost in the Eastern Conference first round in 2016 and in the second round last year.
Right.
So Our theories. I saw a lot of scuttlebutt around the NHL talking about Vigneault as being not very friendly to rookies and young
Yep.
players. He tends to favor his veterans when it comes to handing out ice time. And because the Rangers are heading for a rebuild, and it may be a quick one because we've got a story that's coming out that may, well, it's more rumor than a story that may turn the Rangers around or help turn the Rangers around really quickly. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But with this rebuild, obviously Vigneault not being friendly towards, or that's his reputation anyway, not being friendly towards rookies, is obviously going to have a tough time of that. So,
Right. Yeah. And I've heard that from a couple, and I actually have heard people who've disagreed with that sentiment. I know Larry Brooks is big on writing about that with the New York Post. That didn't give young players. I think there's several things that come to mind, Wayne, and I wanted to share those. First, I kind of the Rangers were 2 wins away from making the Eastern Conference Finals for a third time last season, and we lost to Ottawa, a team we should have won against, but we lost 4-2 in that series. And then in the off season, I'm thinking Vigneault is doing very well, although he maybe should have really focused on that series and won against Ottawa. I don't think this would have happened. They hired Lindy Ruff as an assistant coach. And immediately when I saw that, I knew that there was something swirling and going on. I got the feeling immediately.
So you think he may be their next coach?
I don't know whether he is or not. He was not fired. Scott Arniel was fired. And the second day after Vigneault was fired, Darryl Williams and Scott Arniel were fired, and Lindy Ruff wasn't. Lindy Ruff is still there, and Jeff Gorton's going to be talking to him. Whether or not he stays around, I guess they're going to find out. If Lindy Ruff wants to stay, of course, I guess he's going to stay. But I think what you saw at the beginning of this season was a power struggle that was taking place between Alain Vigneault and Lindy Ruff. I could see it in the body language of Alain Vigneault during the beginning of the season. Not that he was not on the same team coaching with Lindy Ruff, but I think what you saw was here's a coach, Lindy Ruff, with a tremendous amount of experience, who played for the Rangers. Not just a guy who had been out coaching for 3 or 4 years. Lindy Ruff's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he has.
And he comes in and takes second fiddle to Alain Vigneault. And whether or not he relished that role or felt like it was a role where he could build, I just think that those two butted heads, and you could see it early on in style, in how they were going to conduct the team, et cetera, et cetera. Alain Vigneault's responsibilities for him. And I don't think there was a good relationship between those two. That's my opinion. That's all it is. That's my opinion. But it's based on me watching every single game during the season, seeing how the two responded on the ice together, kind of getting an idea for what's going on. When they hired Lindy Ruff, the complexion of the New York Rangers changed. And there you have it in the locker room. The whole behind the scenes, I think you had a team at odds with each other. And it definitely showed when Glenn Sather and Jeff Gordon got together and spoke to the press about our team's not going to win the Stanley Cup. We don't think we have a Stanley Cup winning team. Alain Vigneault vehemently voiced, from my understanding, he felt that the Rangers were a playoff team. At that point, they were only 3 points out of the playoffs when the letter was announced. And he felt that they could make the playoffs, but that there were major structural changes that needed to take place. In any event, what you had was a team in chaos from that point forward. You had players who knew that the team was going to change. There was really no going back on it. The decision had been made. It's kind of like a bombshell that you're in a zone and a bombshell goes off behind you and you lose some of your platoon. You're not going to survive something like that. So here we get to the end of the season, And you see the writing on the wall. Now, if Lindy Ruff is fired tomorrow, then, of course, everything goes out the door. But I don't think he will be. I think he's going to stay on. I think that's going to be his desire.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's what I think is the major reason for what's happened. Because, and number two, every person that was let go this year and last year, you had Dan Girardi going, that was all part of Tortorella's team. Vigneault didn't put together any of those players or any of those pieces of the New York Rangers. And I don't know that you can sit here as a Rangers fan and say, well, you know, this was Alain Vigneault's team. I don't think it ever was. Alain Vigneault never got the chance to go behind the scenes and say we should go after these players, or this is a trade that we should make that I'm behind. I think he did support Jimmy Vesey very strongly. But those are things that are facts. If you're a Rangers fan and you watched any of those games this season, you saw definitely a competition going on between coaches who had big egos. Okay?
Yep.
And I think that's part of what I think that's a major part that's not being discussed about what happened with the New York Rangers. Again, it's my opinion, but you know, I've been a long-time Rangers fan.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that in the offseason that Jeff Gordon does rectify that problem with a guy who's going to come in and who the players are going to like and the players are going to want to play for, because that's going to be very important. Was Vigneault good at holding accountability to the players from a defensive standpoint? Henrik was a sitting duck in a lot of those games. I don't know that he was. I think Tortorella was very good at that. He could hold players accountable for not following through on their assignments in the games. I don't know that Vigneault did as good a job in that area. Maybe he was definitely not a fiery type personality. Believed that the players should handle things, and he kept out of it. But that was definitely evident. But that's my 2 cents worth. I'm sorry to see Alain Vigneault go. I guess you can hear my voice, but that's the way it goes. And really, at the end of the season, after that letter came out, I don't know that he was, you know, he wasn't going to make it. He wasn't going to survive. You could see it coming. So
yeah, that team pretty much tanked right after that letter came out. They just stopped playing hard. They stopped winning and everything.
Yep.
They just went completely in the tank. Right. So, and meantime, with Vigneault being a free agent now in terms of coaching, if Montreal decides to change their coach, because that rumor has swirled about a little bit, not sure how. I don't think there's any validity to it because Claude Julien hasn't been there that long yet, but there's a coaching candidate for the Montreal Canadiens right there. He speaks French, so he's eligible.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you and I know that Montreal will not hire a coach that does not speak French. So, which is why that team will never be truly a year-to-year competitor again, in my opinion, because they limit themselves to stuff like that. Your GM, your coach, all have to be basically any face of the franchise has to be French speaking in order for them to be accepted in that city. That limits their options, and as far as I'm concerned, Montreal will be an also ran for until they decide to get over themselves and start allowing English speaking leadership for that organization. But anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Right. And you're right, 100% right. If Claude Julien's gone, there's the replacement they're going to want to talk to, whether he coached the Canadians or before or not. And that might be something that's happened, and we don't know about it behind the scenes. But you know, it's neither here nor there.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next story. Ken Holland signed a 2-year contract to return as general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. Holland said he would address the future of coach Jeff Blashill on Tuesday. And I haven't seen any news come out of that meeting. Blashill's 104, 105, and 36 in his 3 seasons as coach. In 21 seasons with Holland as GM, the Red Wings have won the Stanley Cup 3 times and the President's Trophy 4 times with 10 division titles. Last season, Detroit's run of 25 consecutive appearances in the Stanley Cup playoffs ended, and this season is first time Red Wings have not qualified for the playoffs in consecutive years since 82 and 83. So I'm surprised that they kept him, but I'm not surprised. I'm surprised because Detroit is in major trouble when it comes to the salary cap. They're not a very good team, and they're right tight against the cap. That's a combination you do not want, because that makes improving your team a very difficult task. And Ken Holland basically put them there. So the fact that they're allowing him to continue is almost like the ownership saying, "You got us into this mess. Now you're going to get us out."
Wow.
So, I mean, that's that's in a sense, what the message there is. And the reason I'm not surprised that they kept him is he's been there so long. They're showing loyalty toward him for the great past that they've had. I mean, they won 3 Stanley Cups and all the stuff that they've done over those 25 years is incredible. But there it is.
Right. My take on that is he's brought them 3 Stanley Cups, and they went to the playoffs 26 years in a row, and they're going to give him a couple more years, and then we'll see what happens. But I agree with you that they got to make some major changes.
Yep. Yeah, it's not going to be a big, huge offseason for the Red Wings. Even though the salary cap's going up, it's still not going to give them enough to go out and not only they can't sign any big-name players because they don't have the cap space, but there really aren't many big-name players out there available to sign because most of the big-name players have been kept by their current teams. So anyway. All right, next one. Antti Raanta signed a 3-year contract with the Arizona Coyotes on Friday. No financial terms were disclosed, although Cap Friendly is saying it's worth $4.25 million a year. The 28-year-old goaltender in his first season with Arizona could have become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. Acquired in a trade with the New York Rangers with center Derek Stepan for defenseman Tony DeAngelo and the number 7 pick in the 2017 NHL draft, who turned out to be Elias Anderson. Raanta is 21-16-6 this season in 46 games. His wins and games played are personal NHL highs. He missed 22 games because of injury. Raanta is tied for second in the NHL in save percentage with .930 and third in goals against average at 2.24. And that's despite him playing for the Arizona Coyotes, a team that struggled all year. He's among goaltenders with at least 20 games this season with those records. He has won 6 straight starts and is 9-1 in his past 10 games, allowing 2 or fewer goals in 9 of them. So he's been lights out since he came back from his injury, and you got to wonder what if the injury that put him out, if he suffered it earlier and was struggling because of it, and then they decided to take the time off. But the numbers he's put up, the reason Arizona is basically in the spot where they are in the standings is not because of Antti Raanta, because when they had him, they were a tough team to beat.
Right.
So that. Signing him they made that a priority, and they got it done so that way they can go into next season confident that they've got a good starting goaltender in place.
Right.
Which you could see Arizona being the team next year similar to what Colorado was this year, a team that finished way down in the standings and made a huge improvement.
Right.
I could see that happening for them next year.
Right. Agreed.
All right. Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman are going to remain coach and general manager of the Blackhawks, respectively, next season, President John McDonough said on Thursday. The Blackhawks are last in the Central Division and will miss the playoffs for the first time since 2007-2008. McDonough says he thinks Bowman and Quenneville are the right people to put the Blackhawks back on track after their worst season in a decade. Quenneville has won the Stanley Cup 3 times with the Blackhawks since he was named coach back on October 16, 2008. His 884 NHL wins with the Blues, Avalanche, and Blackhawks are second all-time behind Scotty Bowman. Stan Bowman replaced Dale Talon to become the 9th GM in Blackhawks history back in July of 2009. So ownership there obviously believes that they don't need a change at GM and coach. I didn't
Yeah.
think they would get rid of Quenneville, but I almost
Yeah.
half expected Bowman to go because Chicago is kind of in the same spot that Detroit is. They're not quite as bad of a team on the
Yeah.
ice as
Yeah.
Detroit is, but they're in that same cap situation where they really can't do much to improve their team because they're right tight against the cap.
Right. Yeah. Listen, you're right about that. Detroit's success is in the rearview mirror quite a ways, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Chicago's success, boy, they just passed it. It's just behind them now.
Yep.
So to keep Quenneville and Bowman, it's something that I would be surprised if they got rid of either or one of both of them, because they can get it back and put it back on track. The Kings did it, so they can.
Yep.
But your remarks a few minutes ago on Detroit are right on the head. I'm surprised about Ken Holland to a certain extent, and I think you're right. They're going to say, you got us into this mess, so you're going to have to get us out. I think you said that very well. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and Chicago is right there with them in terms of a mess. The problem that Chicago has is they've got, they're right against the cap again, and they are there's no way out for them. They've got an aging core of players. You've got Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves that are making 10.5 each, basically for the next 4 more years anyway. And they're both 29 and soon to be 30. Brendan Saad's at $6 million a year. Artem Anisimov is at 4.5. You've got Seabrook, who's 32 years old, at 6.8 for years. He's got years left on his contract.
Right.
A lot of years. Duncan Keith, he's got quite a few years left on his contract. He's at 5.5. And then you've got Corey Crawford. He only has 2 more years left on his contract, but he's at 33 years old. So it's an aging core, a very expensive core. And don't forget about Marian Hossa, who's basically not playing, and he's got a few more years left in his contract, and he's north of $5 million. So when you've got really expensive players like that and aging really expensive players, the future for Chicago, I think the window is closing for them. It may already be closed,
right,
in terms of Stanley Cups.
Right.
So
agreed.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason to rectify things.
Yeah.
All right. More information coming out on transactions. We have the Boston Bruins have signed University of Minnesota Duluth's star forward Carson Kuhlman to a 2-year NHL contract worth an average annual value of $750,000. Kuhlman will join the Providence Bruins on an amateur tryout agreement for the remainder of this season, and of course that contract will begin in the fall. So it'll be interesting to see if he makes the Bruins roster. Not likely, but but yeah, he was. I think he was the MVP of the Frozen Four, wasn't he? I think I saw that in the article.
Okay.
So, or he was on the all-tournament team, one or the other.
Okay.
I'd have to look that up. All right, let's move on. Injuries, and there aren't many this week because basically all the teams that are out of the playoffs, everybody's gone their separate ways, and the players are going to go off and do their thing. And some of these players are just going to go seek whatever medical need they need to take care of all their bumps and bruises, on their own time. And the press really isn't going to follow it. But there were a couple of injuries that came up this week that are kind of noteworthy because they're big names and/or they're on teams that are neither of these are on teams that are headed to the playoffs. First one is Vladimir Tarasenko. He had reconstructive surgery on Wednesday to repair a dislocated left shoulder. And he got hurt in the last game of the season, that game that was against Colorado Avalanche, the game that basically was a Game 7. The winner advanced to the playoffs. The loser season ended. And Colorado ultimately came out on top in that game. And St. Louis ended up missing the playoffs as a result of that game. But Tarasenko got hurt in the first period of that game. So that ended his season, and it looks like he's needing surgery. So even if they would have made it to the playoffs, they would be continuing without Tarasenko. He probably would have missed the rest. However long the playoffs went, he'd have missed all of that.
Right.
And then the other injury I have is Marian Gaborik, who is currently with the Senators. He had surgery to repair a herniated disc in his back on Thursday. Gaborik, who missed the past 7 games, is expected to resume training in approximately 8 weeks. Gaborik, who had 21 points in 46 games this season, has 815 in 1,035 NHL games. So, and basically the teams that are still in the playoffs, there's a long list of players that have been missing time due to injury. Now, all these players are miraculously better as we start the playoffs. The Bruins is quite a list. They had a list as many as 8 long in the last week or two of the regular season, and now everybody's better except for Brandon Carlo and Anders Bjork. Those are the only 2 that are confirmed out for the Bruins. So there's just to give you an example, but every team's got that. So that begs the question: are these guys all healthy, or now are they just healthy enough to play through their injuries in the playoffs because now the games are way more important?
Right. Yeah. As you were sitting there saying that, we used to always say, "Oh, that's a big loss for them. That's a big loss." But since the playoffs have started, man, it's not a big loss for St. Louis with Vladimir Tarasenko because they're not in the playoffs. So
right.
He's got the whole off season to recuperate, and the same with Marian Gaborik. And it's like you said, there's just not the teams that are in the playoffs. They got their rosters ready to go. So
yeah, and all these players, nobody, make no mistake, no NHL team right now that's still in the playoffs has 100% healthy lineup. Yep. Most of them are suffering some sort of injury.
Right.
Or every player has varying degrees of aches and pains that they're playing through. We'll put it that way.
Right.
And you really won't find out about any real injuries until after those teams get eliminated, and then in the days after. Like, for example, a couple of years ago, it was the year that the Bruins played the Blackhawks, 2013, came out after the Stanley Cup final that Bergeron was playing with a cracked rib the whole time, and he ended up having to have surgery to repair that. So, and he was playing with that condition, but that's what you do when you're in a playoff run.
That's right.
So, all right, let's move on to suspensions and fines, and there was only one. Florida Panthers defenseman Mike Matheson was fined $2,000 under Rule 64. That's the diving embellishment penalty. And the fine was triggered in the game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The warning was issued against the Columbus Blue Jackets against January 7th. The one that triggered the fine was against the Ottawa Senators on March 29th. So curious to see if those diving penalties or suspensions and fines are going to continue in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because guys will do anything to win.
Oh, you better believe it. Yeah, it's nitty-gritty time now, and you're right. And they're going to let them play, Wayne. They always do.
Yep.
Penalties won't be called nearly as frequently.
No, they won't. That is true. The rule book changes in the playoffs, which frustrates a lot of fans.
Yeah.
But the referees, basically, they don't want... The reason that happens is the referees don't want to be the cause of an outcome.
Right.
They want to let the players take care of it on the ice. But by not calling penalties, you can make the argument by not calling penalties, they're effectively affecting the outcome because there's penalties that should have been called that aren't. So
right.
Don't get me started on that.
I won't.
Because I had a rough go of it last season because of that. Because I was so unhappy with the officiating in that Ottawa-Boston series in the first round last year. And I'm sure I'll be unhappy this time because Boston, once again, is playing a Canadian team. And, there's that, you got to wonder, all the, what's the war room in Toronto. And when Boston's playing Toronto, how many of these calls are going to go Toronto's way? But anyway.
It's going to be a great series, Wayne. It really is.
Yep.
There's a couple of them in the East, but we'll get to that later.
Yep.
That's going to be a great
All right.
series.
All right. Canada's Stanley Cup drought will end this season if EA Sports NHL 18 playoff simulation is correct. According to the simulation, the Winnipeg Jets will be the last team standing and hoist the Stanley Cup come June, defeating the Boston Bruins in 7 games. In a close series, the Jets win 4-2 in Game 7 to claim the first title in their history and become the first Canadian-based team to win the Cup since Montreal in 1993. Forward Patrick Laine wins the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoffs MVP with 24 points. The Vegas Golden Knights, making their first Stanley Cup playoff appearance, advance all the way to the Western Conference Final after defeating the LA Kings in 6 games and the Sharks in 7 before losing to the Jets in 6. For what it's worth, the EA simulation had Nashville defeating Montreal in the 2017 Stanley Cup Final. The Predators ended up losing in 6 games to the Penguins in the non-simulated or real Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really was interesting, and it did grab my attention when I saw that. For whatever reason.
Yep.
You've got, what, 2 Canadian teams made the playoffs this year? Is that right?
2. Yep, just Winnipeg and Toronto.
But they're good.
Yep.
They're both good.
Yep. All right. Changes are coming for the Carolina Hurricanes. That was the message owner Tom Dundon delivered on Monday as he took an active role in the end-of-season exit interviews with the players. More will be expected from the players next season, both mentally and competitively, said Dundon, who became the owner on January 11th. Either the players have to be tougher or you have to bring in tougher players, he said. I'm easy. I'll take either one. We'll have to see when they get back for training camp if their bodies are bigger, stronger, faster, and if their attitudes are consistent with what they told me they will be. I don't think any of them were good enough. So we've already had that conversation, and I don't think any of them thought they were. Some of the quotes coming out of those. This was a big press conference that happened earlier this week here in Raleigh concerning that team. They will need to get stronger, Williams said. This is Justin Williams. Mediocrity is a very, very slippery slope. You need to be going one way or another. The team is kind of mired in mediocrity right now. That's not acceptable to anybody. And, of course, Justin Williams has plenty of Stanley Cup experience, so he's a good one to speak on that. Yep. Changes may involve more than the players. Coach Bill Peters has 1 season remaining on his contract, but Dundon said no decision about his return has been made as of yet. He does have an option to consider things, Dundon said, referencing a reported opt-out clause in Peters' contract. I've got options to consider things. So today he's the coach, and he's a hardworking guy. He does a great job. There's a lot of positive things about Bill, and there are things Bill needs to work on. Peters was not present on Monday. The Hurricanes finished 14 points behind the Devils for the final playoff spot into the Stanley Cup playoffs from the Eastern Conference. Carolina has missed the Stanley Cup playoffs in each of Peters' 4 seasons and for each of the past 9 years.
Right.
I don't have an understanding with anybody about what's going to happen tomorrow, Dundon said, so it's not about Bill. I don't want anyone to be comfortable. Everyone has to do it different if they want to be part of the way I want to do things. He's still the coach of the team. We want him to be better. Him and I are going to work to be better. Assuming we get where we need to get, we'll be fine.
Right.
So among the items of Dundon's short-term to-do list is finding a GM to replace Ron Francis, who was reassigned to the position of president of hockey operations on March 7th. Several candidates were approached in March, and Dundon said Monday he continues to talk to people about the position. As of right now, team president Don Waddell is the acting GM. So basically, what I read behind that is Dundon approached several players or several people to be GM, and everybody turned it down.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, what do you think about Bill Peters? You know what, Wayne? I heard your opinion on that a couple weeks ago. But what do you think about Bill Peters and his future?
Well, I think he's gonna. I think what's ultimately going to happen is he's going to wait and see what the new GM wants.
Right.
Because the new GM is going to want say. If they go out and hire a new coach right now and then hire a GM, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. Because
Right.
that new GM may come in and say, I don't like that guy. Why did we hire him?
Yep.
So I think what's ultimately going to happen is they're going to hire a new GM, and then that GM, combined with the new owner, is going to decide who the coach is going to be. It appears that Dundon likes Peters.
Right.
So if it were up to Dundon, it looks like Peters stays. But ultimately, he's going to, meet with the new GM, and I guess they'll decide what will happen then. I don't think it's fair to Peters in terms of, the performance over the past 4 years, because quite frankly, Peters hasn't had a very good team in front of him. And I think what they're talking about is that culture of losing has set in this team, and they're accepting the mediocrity that they've played with over the past several years.
Right.
I know some of these players have been here a long time. A lot of these players just seem to be content with being NHL players. And if they make the playoffs, great. If not, oh well, no big deal. And that ultimately has to change. So it'll be interesting to see. But I watched that press conference. It's about an hour long, where the owner met with the press, and basically, in a nutshell, Sebastian Aho is the only player that Dundon has said is untouchable.
Right.
Everybody else could be on their way out.
Right. Right.
So it should be an interesting summer. And then they asked about, a lot of the press asked about going out to pick up a big name free agent in the summer to help the team. And Dundon made a good point. He said the guys that are going to be unrestricted free agents are free agents for a reason.
Right.
He said those guys are free agents because the team that had them last basically didn't want them and allowed them to go.
Right.
The players that teams wanted to keep, they made it a priority to get them re-signed and got it done.
Right.
So why would we want a player that was allowed to be let go from his last team?
Right.
And of course, the big name that is out there is John Tavares.
Right.
That everyone keeps asking about. So he says, he basically says he's not going to just go out and sign a free agent just for the sake of, doing so.
Right. I agree.
He says they're going to continue trying to build the team the right way, and if there's a piece out there that can be had, then they'll do it. If not, they're going to be patient. But at the same time, and coming out of that, I got the sense that you're more likely to see trades with the Carolina Hurricanes than them being active in free agency.
Right. Right.
So I would almost look to see that.
Very good. Very good.
All right, the draft lottery odds were announced this week. I know you're interested in this one.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because your team is interested. Or your team is involved in this one.
Yep.
The Buffalo Sabres, of course, finishing dead last, finish with the best, or will have the best odds at winning the draft lottery. But being dead last only gives them 18.5% chance of winning the lottery.
Right.
That's less than 1 in 5.
Right.
So that more than likely they're not going to win it. Ottawa Senators are next at 13.5, Arizona at 11.5, Montreal at 9.5, Detroit at 8.5, Vancouver at 7.5, Chicago at 6.5, and the Rangers are at 6.
Yep.
Everybody else is at 5 or less. But it's interesting to note that the Islanders have 2 picks in that first 15 or so picks. They're going to have 2 lottery chances. They own Calgary's pick. Calgary's listed at 2.5, and their own pick, which is at 3.5. So if you add those odds together, they have the same odds as the New York Rangers at winning at 6%.
Right.
So
now we have 2 first-round picks as well.
But the other one is later.
Not in the lottery.
It's not a lottery pick, right?
Yeah.
So the Islanders are the only team that have 2 lottery picks.
Yeah.
So, of course, the draft is on June 22nd in Dallas.
Dallas, that's correct.
And the picks, I'm looking over the article to see when the picks, the lottery will be held on April 28th. That's Saturday the 28th in Toronto. And they should reveal those, who actually gets what pick on that night.
Right. Agreed.
So, well, good. All right. And just finally, we'll finish up this section with some rumors. Starting with Jaromir Jagr. He looks like he's going to try to get a job back in the NHL next year. He's going to give it another go. We'll see. We'll see if any team wants to get him in here. I'm curious to see who will end up signing him. I know the Bruins probably won't be one of those teams, so Bruins fans, don't get your hopes up. Because that team is so full of prospects and up-and-coming players right now. There's no room in the Bruins for a player of his status, I guess. Is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So I wish him the best. I hope he does come back, but I'm skeptical whether or not anybody will decide to sign him. And then the other rumors is we got to talk a little bit about Tavares and a little bit about Ilya Kovalchuk. First, yep. Tavares. Tavares is wavering. They keep asking him, are you coming back to the island? Yep. Are you going to re-sign in the island? He's wavering. That tells me that he's not entirely certain that he wants to come back to the island.
And there's been news stories out there that back up exactly what you're saying. I've read where he says, of course, I want to stay here. The fans support me. They back me up, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Then, you see somebody like Sidney Crosby who takes a pay cut, might be the best player in hockey, and stays in Pittsburgh. There's a guy that wants to stay put.
Yeah, right.
Likes playing for the Penguins. Likes Pittsburgh. Likes his situation.
Yep.
So we'll see with Tavares, but that's definitely not taking place with him.
Yep. And Tavares right now is the clear number 1 player available in open free agency as of right now. So basically it's the Tavares watch is on, we'll put it that way. And then Ilya Kovalchuk. I saw a thing this week that he is rumored to have already have an agreement in place to sign with the New York Rangers.
Yeah, that is stunning news. I did not know that.
So, and I've heard that from several sources. So, not sure exactly. Obviously he can't sign until July 1st right. Because until July 1st, New Jersey still owns his rights. Right. But all the rumors out there are saying that Kovalchuk has agreed to a contract with the New York Rangers. They just can't make it official until July 1st.
Right.
So that will speed up the Rangers, if that happens. That will speed up the Rangers' rebuild, that's for sure. Now, he's coming back as a 35-year-old player. He's been gone a few years, but he tore up the KHL, so he's still going to be a very good player for the Rangers. I wouldn't expect 100 points out of him.
Yeah.
But if he can give the Rangers 60 points at a fairly cap-friendly number, it all depends on what that number is, but
right.
whether or not that'll be a good deal for the Rangers.
Agreed 100%. And the Rangers, quite honestly, they're going to need to sign someone in this offseason, including making wise decisions at the draft table. But they're going to need somebody. So I don't know how that's going to go, but we'll see. I heard they're still going to shop some players and try to make some changes. We'll see. It's going to be a very interesting season for the off season for the Rangers.
Yep, for sure. All right, number of honors and milestones this week, and we'll breeze through these real quick because we got to get going on our playoff talk. First and foremost, the NHL regular season concluded on Sunday with the Edmonton Oilers center Connor McDavid capturing his second consecutive Art Ross Trophy as the league scoring champion. Washington Capitals left wing Alex Ovechkin claiming his seventh Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy as the NHL's goal-scoring leader, and Jonathan Quick of the LA Kings winning his second career William Jennings Trophy as the goaltender who plays at least 25 games for the club, allowing the fewest goals. So kudos to those three, and those awards are statistical awards based on regular season performance, so that is why those awards are already handed out. Well, they don't physically have them until the awards banquet after the season concludes, but they've already won those trophies anyway. Dallas Stars left wing Jamie Benn, Florida Panthers goaltender Roberto Luongo, and Philadelphia Flyers center Claude Giroux have been named the NHL's 3 stars for the week ending April 8th. So big seasons for those. The big highlight there is Roberto Luongo getting his 1,000th game played, and I'll get to that in a minute. Toronto Maple Leafs set a team record for points in a season at 105 with a 4-2 win against the Montreal Canadiens at Air Canada Centre on Saturday. Their previous record was 103 during the 03-04 season. This day and age, as long a history as the Toronto Maple Leafs had, see them set a team record for points in a season is pretty remarkable.
Yep.
Granted, that team's over 100 years old.
Right.
Connor Hellebuck got his 44th win, setting an NHL record for most wins in a season by a U.S.-born goalie. So kudos to him on that one. He passed Tom Barrasso, who played before shootouts were introduced in the NHL. Hellebuck had 4 shootout wins this season. So either way, Hellebuck is the all-time single-season winner for wins for a U.S. goalie. Kudos to him. Adam Gaudette won the Hobey Baker Award on Friday, given annually to the player voted to the best in NCAA Division I men's ice hockey. And the 2 finalists that year, or for that, were Ryan Donato from Harvard and Hendrik Borgstrom of the University of Denver. And of course, Adam Gaudette won playing for the Northeastern Huskies of the Hockey East. So kudos to all 3 of those players, and they have both all commenced their NHL careers. So they're already underway. All right, the NHL announced the creation of the Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award, which will recognize the commitment of those improving lives and strengthening communities through hockey. The award, unveiled on Friday, will be presented at the 2018 NHL Awards in Las Vegas. The award will be presented to a person not affiliated with the NHL or any of its clubs, team, league, rink, or association who best utilizes hockey as a platform for participants to build character and develop important life skills for a more positive family experience. Starting May 1, nominees will be accepted on social media or via an online form. A committee, including Willie O'Ree himself, will choose 6 finalists before voting is open to the public from May 15th to the 30th. The winner will be invited to take part in the NHL awards ceremony at the end of the season. So, a new award being created. And then, of course, talking about Roberto Luongo's 1,000th game played, the names on the list joined by Roberto Luongo on Thursday say it all. Patrick Waugh, Martin Brodeur, and now Luongo, who became the 3rd goalie to play 1,000 NHL games when he helped the Florida Panthers get a 3-2 win against the Boston Bruins on Thursday. That's it. The short list is a testament to how difficult and significant an achievement this milestone is.
Yeah, and you know, Wayne, I think Roberto Luongo has cemented his place in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, for sure.
There's any doubt. Even he's never won never had a Vezina. He's never won the Stanley Cup.
He's played for some bad teams. So
yeah, yes, but he's in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's any doubt now.
No, for sure he will be. And then finally this week, the Sedin twins hung up their skates together. So, and I watched the tail end of their last home game, and what a storybook ending that was. They ended up scoring. Daniel ended up scoring a goal in overtime to give Vancouver the win, and of course the assist came from none other than Henrik in that final home game. So sent that place into you'd think the Vancouver Canucks just won the Stanley Cup when they scored that overtime goal,
right?
Just to see them go out that way. So
yeah.
Can't say I was much of a Sedin fan, but they get a lot of respect from around the league anyway,
right?
For all the things that they've done. So congrats to them on a very very strong career for both of them. And like you say about Luongo, I think those two guys are going to be first ballot Hall of Famers as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Both of them in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know if Luongo will be a first ballot guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he is. But he's going to make the Hall of Fame. No question about it.
For sure. All right. Now we're on to the power rankings. And I believe it's your turn.
It's my week, Wayne, and when you get to this point of the season, it's pretty easy. You got 16 teams, and that's all we report on. Yep. But I might have some differences with you. I went straight down the list. I went right down the list in terms of points. It's a straight setup.
Sure,
so
why not?
The standings, you'll have it. I always throw in my honorable mention, and rather than putting St. Louis at number 17, I put Florida there. My reasoning behind that was Florida had to get 4 points to tie Philadelphia, and they did it. But Philadelphia won against the Rangers to get in. And then Florida did it in dramatic fashion. They played well. So I put them as my last honorable mention for the season. Number 16, I have the Colorado Avalanche. Number 15, the New Jersey Devils. Number 14 is Columbus. Number 13 is the Philadelphia Flyers. Number 12, the Los Angeles Kings. Number 11, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Number 10 is San Jose. Number 9 is the Anaheim Ducks. Number 8 is Minnesota. Number 7, Toronto. Number 6, the Washington Capitals. Number 5 is the Vegas Golden Knights. Number 4, the Boston Bruins. Number 3, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number 2, Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Jets. And number 1, the President's Trophy winning Nashville Predators. And that may doom them. And then again, it may not, but that may doom them winning the President's Trophy. That puts a monkey on your back.
Yeah, it certainly does. Certainly does. But if any team is capable of doing it, they are, because they're a very strong team. They're playing very well heading into the playoffs.
That's true.
And speaking of playoffs, let's talk about them. Starting with, I guess we'll just go through this series by series and just go from there.
Yes, sir.
Let's start with the Devils and the Lightning. This is the number one team in the Atlantic taking on the number 2 wild card team. And both teams are heading into the playoffs. The Lightning have 113 points, won the Atlantic Division. Devils at 97 points. The Devils won all 3 games against Tampa Bay in this regular season. And Tampa Bay, of course, one of those was an overtime loss. So Tampa Bay technically is 0-2-1 against them. So what's your initial take on this series?
I think Tampa Bay is going to be a different team in terms of these two teams and their season record in the playoffs. I think they're going to come in, and Steven Stamkos is hungering for this opportunity. And I won't tell you where I think Tampa Bay is going to go yet, but I think Tampa Bay is going to win this series. And New Jersey's going to learn a lot.
Yep.
That's how I see it.
Yep. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a fair point. What I see is, first of all, Devils have a goaltending controversy that they got to get worked out. Keith Kincaid and Corey Schneider. Corey Schneider is supposed to be the starter there, but Kincaid has been outplaying him. So my guess is that Kincaid will probably get the start for the Devils in Game 1. That's just a guess. Obviously, in Tampa Bay, Vasilevsky is the clear number one starter there. A big question mark on Tampa Bay's side is how healthy and or injured is Steven Stamkos.
Right.
They're saying he's going to play, but it seems to me that he's going to be playing a bit hurt.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how effective he can be. And then an unknown for the Devils is Nico Hischier.
Right.
Not so much for injury status, but the fact that he's a rookie. How will he handle the hot spotlight that the playoffs start? This is Taylor Hall's first playoff ever, so he technically is a playoff rookie.
Right.
Even though he's had a huge season, arguably should be the Hart Trophy winner. But the strategy for Tampa Bay is essentially shut down Taylor Hall and you can shut down the Devils.
Right.
Whether that remains to be true or not is another question. But I also believe that Tampa Bay is going to win this series, and I think it's the biggest mismatch of the playoffs at this point.
I agree.
Except for maybe the Nashville series, but we'll get to that one.
Yeah. Don't they reseed the teams too after the first round?
No.
They do not.
No, they do not.
Oh.
Not anymore. That's an old way of doing things.
Okay.
So the winner of this series will advance to play the winner of the next series that we need to talk about, and that's the Bruins Maple Leafs.
Yep.
And, of course, Bruins finished number 2 in the Atlantic. Maple Leafs finished number 3. And on paper, both these teams are very evenly matched. I think Toronto is is definitely the younger team of the two, and probably faster than the Bruins. So if Toronto is going to win this series, they're going to have to use their team speed, their youth, to try to overpower the Bruins in that sense. The big question mark with the Bruins is the number of rookies that they have on the team. Of course, technically Charlie McAvoy is a rookie, but he's already got one playoff under his belt, so he's almost considered a veteran at this point. But there's a number of rookies on the Bruins that will be playing in their first playoff series. And of course, the Bruins have a core of players that have been there, a long time and have Stanley Cups. I'm thinking of David Krejci and Bergeron and Marchand and Chara and Rask. There's a good core there to keep everybody kind of level-headed, but
right.
That is I don't know. This as a Bruins fan, this series scares me because I think Toronto is going to be a very tough team for the Bruins to beat.
I think they're going to win this series, Wayne. Sitting here as a just trying to give my opinion on it. And the reason I think they're going to win is because of the veteran players on those teams. You got guys that won the Stanley Cup in 2011. So you got a veteran presence on the Boston Bruins that knows what to do and come crunch time in the playoffs, etc. I think they'd like playing for Cassidy. I think it's evident when I watch them play. They enjoy playing for their coach. So I think they're going to win this. The thing is how much atrophy, how much is this going to cost them if it's a 7-game series particularly, because they're going to wind up, now that you're saying that, they don't reseed the teams, they're going to have to play Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a tall task. If they can dispatch Toronto in 5 games, maybe even a far away 6 games, win a couple games 4-1 or something.
Yep.
Then they're okay. But if it's a tough grind them out 6 or 7 game series, and then you got to go against Tampa Bay, who's going to have home ice.
Yep.
It's going to be tough.
Yep. And for that reason, and one of the other things that we haven't touched on too is the injuries that the Bruins have been enduring over the past several weeks. like I said earlier in the podcast, the Bruins have had as much as 8 regular players out of their lineup at once.
Wow.
As recently as a couple weeks ago. So the question remains, yeah, most of them are coming back to play in the playoffs, but truly, how healthy are they?
Right.
Are they 100%? Are they 90%? Are they 75%?
Right.
So that remains to be seen. We won't find that out until the Bruins get eliminated. But to take a banged-up Bruins team and a tired Bruins team because of the schedule that they had to endure towards the end of the season, put them up against a young, high-powered Maple Leafs offense, if they get any kind of goaltending, I'm talking about the Maple Leafs, if they get any kind of goaltending from Anderson, decent goaltending, or if the defense plays really well, the Bruins are in trouble.
Right, I agree with you.
I think the weakness with the Maple Leafs is their defense and the goaltending. If they have, if they have a weakness, and if the Bruins can exploit that, they'll advance. They shouldn't have any trouble. If those defending players step up and play a very good series and shut down the Bruins, particularly their top line, the Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak line, if they shut that line down, the Bruins are in trouble.
Right.
Quite frankly, I'm skeptical of this series. So I actually think the Maple Leafs are going to win it. I hope I'm wrong. But I think, and even if the Bruins do win this series, like you said, if Tampa Bay gets out of their series in 5 or even fewer games, and are sitting there waiting for the Bruins, getting healthy while the Bruins are, banging it out in a long series with Toronto, it's going to be a short run for the Bruins this year, I'm afraid, because if they manage to defeat Toronto, then they got to turn around and face arguably the best team in the league in the second round. It's just not an easy path for Boston.
Let's say we're both wrong. Let's say New Jersey just figures it out and they continue to play like they did in the regular season against Tampa Bay. You're in good shape.
Yeah.
If they beat Tampa Bay, even if it goes 6 games, it's a strenuous 6 games on New Jersey. They're looking good. Boston's probably going to be in the Eastern Finals.
Yeah.
Or at least in the I would say they make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. So it's you never know. You never know in these things. Los Angeles proved an 8 seed can win the Stanley Cup. So
yeah, you just never know.
Yep.
And this year's bracket seems to be more uncertain than ever. But anyway, for my official bracket, I did fill out Maple Leafs advancing in this series. So I just hope I'm wrong as a Bruins fan. We'll put it that way. All right, next series is Washington and Columbus. The battle of the red, white, and blues in this one.
Yeah.
This one, man, I have a trouble deciding which team is going to win here. Washington on paper appears to be the better team.
Yep.
Although lately they too have a bit of a goaltending controversy. Holtby hasn't been playing all that great. Grubauer has been stealing a lot of stars from him.
Groovy dooby doo.
Groovy dooby doo. And in fact, I believe the Capitals have named Grubauer as the starter for Game 1. So
that's right. That's correct.
So I think
he's been playing very well, Wayne.
He has been playing very well, and I guess if he continues to play well and stays hot, he could take the Capitals. If he stays hot, he could take the Capitals a long way.
Yep.
Because outside the net, the Capitals still are a very good team, particularly up front. You still got Ovechkin, you've still got Oshie, you've still got all these offensively talented players that can fill nets with pucks. But if Washington has any troubles with Grubauer and Holtby comes in and falters, it's going to be a quick series.
I agree.
Because down in the other end, you've got Bobrovsky, one of the best goalies in the league.
That's right.
So
absolutely.
So he can shut the door. And I think what is going to happen in this series is going to go either way. This series is going to be determined by goaltending. Whichever goalie performs better in this series is going to take their team to the next round.
I agree with you. Wayne, you're singing my song there.
I just don't see any other thing happening. Just for the record, Washington beat Columbus 3 out of 4 in the regular season in this series. Oh, and the Toronto-Boston series, Toronto won 3 out of 4 against them. So not that the regular season matters, because it really doesn't. You throw out the records when the playoffs start. But anyway, for what it matters, that there it is. In this series, I can't remember who I picked to go in this series.
I got the Washington Capitals, but I think this is going to be a 6 or 7 games. I
actually have. Yeah, go.
It's going to be one of these hotly contested, attrition-filled series that's going to wear the winner of the series down. But I think Washington will ultimately prevail. And the only reason I'm saying that is because either if Holtby does come in, I think he's going to play well because he's got the experience. But Grubauer's playing very well, and they have Alexander Ovechkin on the power play. And I just see him still out there saying, don't give up on me yet.
Yep.
That's how I see it.
I actually, in my bracket that I filled out for the NHL bracket challenge, I have Columbus winning in 7 in this series. So I'm going to go with that.
I hear you.
So yeah, and I think the problem with Holtby right now is the mental issues. He has so many. It drives me nuts to watch Holtby in his pregame, what they call rituals.
Yeah,
it's bordering on OCD. The stuff he does to get himself ready for a game. I think if he just focuses less on his rituals and more on just simply playing the game, I think he might be in better shape. But I think the rituals at this point are getting in his way.
I agree with you.
So
I agree with you,
Washington fans who are annoyed by everything that he does to get ready, it's worked for him in the past, but now it seems to be getting in the way of his game at this point. All right, let's talk about the next series. We're almost done with the East. Penguins, Flyers. This is going to be my favorite one to watch just a pure fan.
You are
Flyers,
not kidding.
Flyers, Penguins, Battle of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
These two teams are going to physically beat each other to pieces.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's great. I am rooting heavy for the Flyers to win this series.
There we go, Lane.
Because I'm so tired of the Pittsburgh Penguins winning everything. And they've won 2 straight Stanley Cups, so they're going in trying to win a third. And I think if Pittsburgh is going to ultimately get knocked out of the playoffs, it's going to be on a multi-tiered attack from multiple NHL teams to do it. First, the Flyers are going to beat them up physically.
Yep.
And then Pittsburgh will advance to play Washington or Columbus, who will continue to beat them up even more. Yeah. And then ultimately, I think Pittsburgh gets knocked out of the playoffs in the 3rd round, just because they can't physically handle the beatings anymore. So that's what I hope is going to happen. So, Pittsburgh fans are going to be mad at me for rooting heavily against them. But hey, come on, they've won 2 Stanley Cups in a row. Enough is enough.
I agree.
Let's let somebody else win for a change. So, but anyway. Pittsburgh won all 4 meetings against the Flyers this season. 2 of them in post regulation. So Flyers are technically 0-2-2 against Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's 4-0. Doesn't really mean much. The Flyers are playing much better than they did earlier in the season. They've got a good core of forwards. The Flyers are going into this basically with nothing to lose. They're confident. They think they can beat Pittsburgh. They think they can hang with them. The big question with the Flyers is how their goaltending will do.
I agree. If their goaltending shows up, because Brian Elliott is questionable. I mean, but if he comes in and plays the way we've seen Brian Elliott play at his best, and that's what he's going to have to do. The Flyers are a formidable team, and the unspoken, unknown factor of Shane Gostisbehere is going to come into this series. He is going to show in this series what he's made of, I've spoke about him before, but he is the bread and butter defenseman for that team,
Yep.
and he is going to. I think he's going to make a statement in this series.
Yep, and yeah, he's going to be the big factor for them defensively. The goaltending, Elliott, he's coming off of an injury. He played 2 games in the regular season, right at the end of the season. Played well in those 2 games, so we'll see if he can continue that. He missed 25 games before that. And Mrazek, Neuwirth, and Lyon were the goalies that kind of filled in the nets in the meantime. And they played okay, good enough to get them in the playoffs, but not, nobody was writing home about it because, Elliott is going to be the game 1 starter. So, and at the other end, Murray has had moments. He's yet to get through, even though he's got 2 Stanley Cups, he's yet to get through an entire playoff without getting hurt.
Right.
And Pittsburgh has shown when Matt Murray gets hurt, they're in trouble.
Absolutely.
Pittsburgh's times this year where they have not had Murray, they play barely, if they even do play 500. They're even probably slightly below 500 if you look it up. I don't know just saying this off the top of my head, but Pittsburgh is a mediocre team without Matt Murray. So if he gets hurt, they're in trouble, and he likely will because he's yet to get through an entire playoff completely healthy. So that could be Pittsburgh's Achilles heel. So I expect a lot of play around the goalies, a lot of contact with both goalies on the count of both teams, and it's just going to be a rough series. It's going to be
some penalty minutes mounting. I can see Wayne Simmons getting up in the face of Sidney Crosby and the Penguins. I can see that getting to be under trying to get under their skin. I could see it happening. This is going to be a great series to watch.
Yeah, well, the Flyers are going to want to be careful with that because Pittsburgh's power play is the best in the NHL, and they're at close to a 25% clip. So, if the Flyers get a lot of the penalties that give Pittsburgh power plays, that could be their undoing too. So, but it's going to be a fun series. I'll be watching every game of the series, with the exception of tonight. I've got to referee a game tonight later on, so. So I'll miss probably the 3rd period of that game. I hope it goes into overtime and I can see the end of it when I get home. Okay. All right. So let's move out west. Predators, Avalanche. I think this is the other mismatch in the playoffs other than the Tampa Bay one. I think the Predators are going to roll over at Colorado.
Agreed.
I think the Predators are a playoff hardened team. They're playing very well. Pekarine's, been playing lights out in net. Got the strongest defense core in the league in terms of top 4, even top 6 for that matter.
Yeah.
Great group of forwards. I mean, Nashville has it all.
I agree.
It's a nice story that Colorado was able to get back in the playoffs after getting only 48 points last year. But I think this is the year where Colorado gets a lesson on what it's like to play in the playoffs because they got a lot of new faces on that team.
Yeah.
And they'll build from there. But I think this series, I'll be surprised if it goes all the way to 7 games for sure.
Oh, that's agreed. And Colorado's not just an 8 seed, Wayne. I think they're 16.
Yeah.
They're the weakest team in the NHL. But hats off. I think Jared Bednar, if he doesn't win the Jack Adams, he's an honorable mention as the number 2 guy behind. It's either going to be him or Gallant. So he had a great season coaching Colorado back into the playoffs. But I think Nashville's just got too many weapons. Even with Nathan McKinnon, they'll stop him. They have the defense to stop him easily.
Yep.
So I think Nashville wins, and they may even sweep this series. But I could see him winning in 5.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move on to the next one then, since we're in agreement on that one. Wild and Jets. Jets are the number 2. Wild are the number 3. The unfortunate part for this series is the team that advances from this is going to have to play, assuming that Nashville advances, they're going to have to play Nashville. So we could potentially have the number 1 and number 2 team in the NHL in terms of points in the standings playing each other in the second round of the playoffs.
Yep.
if both Nashville and Winnipeg advance. So that has a lot of people in that division anyway, very upset at the playoff format and wanting something changed because because to have two really good teams playing each other in the playoffs, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But anyway, it'd be a shame to see one of those two teams having to go out that early. But anyway, Winnipeg against Minnesota. You've got the Jets, who are at 114 points, the Wild at 101. The Winnipeg won 3 out of 4 against Minnesota in the regular season. Again, that doesn't really matter much once you reach the playoffs. Question there is Winnipeg, this is their first. They've yet to win a series as a franchise, and this goes back to their days as the Atlanta Thrashers. Winnipeg's never won a playoff series, period.
Right.
So this would be potentially their first. And they're already, remember the days, the old Winnipeg Jets, when the Jets would make the playoffs and they had the white out where everybody wore white, and then they had the white towels that they wave? Well, they're bringing that back.
Oh,
so
wow.
It is going to be electric in that building.
Oh, you know it. And what was it last year? They lost in 4 games or whatever, or the standing ovation for that team. I'm thinking it was the last game of the season. Maybe they didn't make the playoffs, but they got a 2-minute standing ovation.
Yep.
It's going to be deafening in that building. It's going to be so loud.
Yep. It's going to be amazing to watch.
Yep. It's going to be like Nashville Junior.
Yep. And this is going to be a good rivalry because the Minnesota Wild are relatively close to Winnipeg, probably the closest team to them geographically.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
So this is going, this is probably the first in a nice budding rivalry here. It's nice to see. And this is why the NHL came up with the format they have, is to create playoff series like this one.
Yeah.
Teams that are geographically close to each other, playing each other to advance in the playoffs, to create that extra buzz for the early rounds of the playoffs.
Right.
So this one is going to be a fun one to watch.
Agreed.
I mean, you've got both teams on both sides have great players. You've got Eric Stahl, one of the better players for the Wild. You've got Patrick Laine on the other side. You've got good goaltending with Hellebuck and Dubnyk. You've got, great defensemen on both sides. I mean, this series has it all. And this one, quite frankly, is very tough to choose who's going to win. I think ultimately Winnipeg's going to win this series, but it's not going to be – I'll be surprised if it goes less than 6 games.
I agree with you. It's going to be a strongly contested series. And you're right. Now, who is it? Minnesota just lost a very key player. Sutter.
Yeah.
Is out.
Yeah. Not Gary Suter. Yeah.
And I don't know how that, but because Winnipeg does have the defense too. But I tell you, I was so impressed with Patrick Laine the last time they played us in the Garden within the last month, and he had a hat trick. He's really, really good. He's a tremendous player. And I just think that one factor right there, if Laine shows up, I think they're going to win. I think Winnipeg's going to win.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely the best player in this series, for sure. Yeah. But, they're talking about Ryan Suter being injured. He's probably out at least for I think he got a broken ankle. So he'll be out for the playoffs, if not, unless they somehow get him back for the Stanley Cup final if they make it that far. But Jared Spurgeon has been out for a while for Minnesota as well, and he's projected to play.
Oh, yeah.
If not in Game 1, he's expected to play in this series. So that kind of helps with the Ryan Suter situation a little bit because Spurgeon's a pretty good defenseman himself. So, right. But the Jets are relatively healthy right now. Matt Hendricks and Dmitry Kulikov are the only players that are listed as injured right now. So, Winnipeg's going in a pretty good shape, and they've won. I think they won 5 or 6 games in a row to finish the season. So They're going in on a high note. They're going in running on all cylinders. I just think, they will ultimately prove to be too much for the Wild.
Yeah, I agree with you.
In this series. All right, let's look at the Golden Knights and Kings. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is going to be a fun one to watch.
First round matchups.
Yep. Two somewhat geographical rivals. I mean, Las Vegas has kind of been LA's, but before the Golden Knights came around, LA played preseason games in Vegas every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Vegas is almost considered like a second home for LA.
Yeah.
And here we are, first time Golden Knights make the playoffs. They're having to play the LA Kings.
Yeah.
It is going to be a blast. Golden Knights are the number 1 seed in the Pacific Division. Kings are the number 1 wild card. But on the ice, the teams are much closer than that. So the Kings obviously have a core of players that have lots and lots of playoff experience. Jonathan Quick is healthy in net for them. He'll be a big factor in this series if he gets hot. He's got Stanley Cups under his belt. But on the other end, you've got Marc-Andre Fleury, who has 3 Stanley Cups of his own.
Yeah.
So the goaltending matchup here alone is worth watching this series.
Elling.
Yep. Yeah. And the big question remains: can the Vegas Golden Knights continue the magic of this season?
Yeah.
That they've put up so far. I'm trying to remember who I put in for the winner of this series. Of course, it's not going to come up. There it is. I have the Kings winning this series in 7 on my official bracket.
Yeah.
So I think this series will definitely go the distance.
I could see the Kings knocking off Vegas too. This was my hardest one to pick, but I picked Vegas because of Marc-Andre Fleury, and Carlson is having a great year. I mean, there's several players on Vegas having a great year, but Carlson's having a great year, and I just see Vegas somehow putting it together and winning it. That was my hardest one to pick, though. I struggle with that one more than any other one.
Yep. And I think with the Kings, if they get by Vegas, this will be their toughest series to open the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think if the Kings get by Vegas, they're going to roll over their next opponent, whoever it may be, either Anaheim or San Jose.
Well said. Well said, Wayne. If LA does get by Vegas, they're in the Western Conference Finals against either Nashville or Winnipeg.
Yep.
And that's going to be I agree. And never count them out then. They could win the Stanley Cup then.
Yep, they certainly could. All right, the next series is that last one that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the Ducks and the Sharks. 2 California teams. Anytime 2 California teams get together, it's always a fun series to watch. And this one is basically 2 teams that have been in the playoffs every single year pretty much for the last several years. So both teams have a lot of playoff experience. And I expect this series to go the distance as well.
Yeah.
I have the Sharks winning this one in 7, and this one was kind of a coin flip for me as well.
Yes. The unknown factor there is the guy that San Jose just got,
Evander Kane.
And if he can really elevate the San Jose Sharks' offensive capabilities quickly. If he does so, San Jose may come out the winner in this series. I'm picking Anaheim. I didn't have as tough a time with this one as I did the Vegas LA series. I just think Anaheim, that they have a great defense, and one of the top defenses in the West for sure. So I just think that's going to be telltale as to whether or not. Now, goaltending will be important too.
Yes.
And Anaheim's got to show. Anaheim's got to show up in net.
Yeah, and that was really the question mark with me that left me picking San Jose in the end, because Martin Jones down in the San Jose end has been relatively healthy all year. He's been playing well all year.
Yep.
But on the other end, John Gibson, although he's played well, he's been banged up at times this year.
Yeah.
And my question is, how healthy is he at this moment, and can he hold up?
Right.
Through a long playoff run, because Gibson is probably the better goalie of the two overall, but I just don't know how healthy Gibson is.
Right.
Because they need him, but you know how it is. They don't talk about injuries, so we don't really know.
Agreed 100%.
And you can bet San Jose is going to test that. There's going to be, I think, all around the league, there's going to be a lot of goaltender interference reviews. It's going to be mind-numbing and agonizing to watch all of the reviews take place, because there's going to be so much contact around the net. Teams are going to be doing all kinds of stuff around the net to try to disrupt the goaltending situation. So,
agreed.
But and that is why, I question whether or not Gibson can hold up to all that traffic and all that contact, given how much he's been injured this year. So that's why I ultimately picked San Jose to advance. I'm not confident that Gibson is 100% there yet. Okay, so that is it. You have anything else you want to add to the playoff stuff?
No. We covered it. We covered it well, Wayne.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I think all 8 playoff series are worth watching to some degree.
Yep.
I don't see any series here that are going to be boring.
There's some tremendously good matchups though in the first round. We have drawn the Boston-Toronto series. The Pittsburgh-Philadelphia series is just going to be great to watch.
Yep.
Vegas-LA.
Yep.
Winnipeg, Minnesota.
Yep.
You're talking about just some great, and like you said, when two teams from California get together, it's a barn burner. Anaheim, San Jose. That's going to be a great series.
Yep.
So just going to be a fun playoffs to watch.
Yep. I'm hoping for a lot of Game 7s, and I'm hoping for a lot of overtimes in Game 7s. So
yeah.
We're definitely excited for the playoffs to start. So, and they start here actually they should be starting right now. It's 7:00 now, so first game should be underway here shortly. All right, let's move on to our minor league hockey minute then.
Yes, sir.
And I just wanted to give a quick update on the playoffs for the American Hockey League. Where we were last week, only a few teams had clinched playoff spots. Well, this week, a lot has changed. There is only one playoff spot left undecided in the entire AHL. In the East, your playoff teams are going to be, I got to zoom in here. It's so small. Lehigh Valley, Scranton Wilkes-Barre, Providence, and Charlotte. As for who's playing who, we don't know that yet. There's still another week left in the regular season. But those 4 teams have clinched in the Atlantic Division. So Bridgeport, Hartford, Springfield, and Hershey are all out. In the North, Toronto, Syracuse, Rochester, and Utica are in. Binghamton, Belleville, and Laval are out. In the Central, heading out west, Chicago, Manitoba, Grand Rapids, and Rockford are all in. Milwaukee, Iowa, Cleveland are out. And then in the Pacific, this is the one division that is yet to be decided yet. Tucson, Ontario, and Texas are in. And as of yet, the teams that are fighting for the last playoff spot are San Diego, San Jose, Stockton, Bakersfield, and San Antonio. And they're all relatively close to each other. Right now, it's looking like it could go either way because the worst team of that bunch is got a 534 winning percentage, and the best team is at 585. So right now, San Diego is holding the edge over the rest of them, but it could go. Each team has 3 games left to play, so it could go either way.
Right.
So we will know by next podcast who is in the playoffs, and they may have actually been. No, they shouldn't have started by the time we do the next podcast. We will be in between the regular season and the playoffs in the American Hockey League. So that was my story this week.
Very good. Mine was in the American Hockey League as well, Wayne. It's a real quick one. It's not too long. I looking at the awards that were that they have handed out as far as the American Hockey League goes. Sami Niku was voted the AHL's top defenseman for 2017-18. The American Hockey League announced today that Sami Niku of the Manitoba Moose, and this is from yesterday's AHL website. Sami Niku of the Manitoba Moose is the winner of the Eddie Shore Award as the AHL's outstanding defenseman for the 2017-18 season. The award is voted on by coaches, players, and members of the media in each of the league's 30 cities. And this is really interesting because what I learned this year, Wayne, from you, is that the West and the East, so to speak, don't ever play each other. So all 30 cities vote on the award, but the Manitoba Moose have never played against the likes of the Providence Bruins or the Charlotte Checkers or the Springfield. God, I'm at a loss for their name. But they haven't played teams. Yep, they haven't played against teams in the East. Nico joins Justin Schultz, 2013, Justin Schultz of the Pittsburgh Penguins, as the only rookie in the 60-year history of the Eddie Shore Award to win the honor. Entering the final week of the regular season, Niku ranked second among all AHL defensemen and tied for third among all rookies in scoring with 53 points, 16 goals, and 37 assists, while posting a +19 rating in 73 games for Manitoba. His 10 power play goals are one off the league lead for both rookies and defensemen, and his two-way play has helped the Moose to a top 5 ranking in both goals for and goals against this season. Niku was named a 2017-18 first team AHL All-Star last week and also earned a spot on the AHL All-Rookie team. A 21-year-old native of Haapavesi, Finland. Niku was a seventh round draft pick by Winnipeg in 2015 and made his NHL debut with the Jets on April 3rd, scoring a goal in a 5-4 overtime win at Montreal. So look out for this guy. He really is going to be something for the Winnipeg Jets. I doubt he's going to be with Manitoba much longer. Niku played for JYP Jyväskylä in the Finnish Liga before signing with Winnipeg and won a gold medal with Finland at the 2016 IIHF World Junior Championship. This is really interesting. The award was first presented by the AHL in 1958-59 in honor of the late Eddie Shore, a member of both the Hockey Hall of Fame and the AHL Hall of Fame, who is widely regarded as one of hockey's greatest defensemen. Shore won a total of 7 Calder Cups in his career, including 2 as the general manager of the Buffalo Bisons and 5 as the longtime owner of the Springfield Indians. Previous winners include Nicholas Kronwall, 2005. Johnny Boychuk won the award in 2009. Mark Barberio, 2012. Justin Schultz won it in 2013. T.J. Brennan won it twice in 14 and 16. Chris Weidman, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago with the Ottawa Senators, won it in 2015. And Matt Dormina won it in 2017. Other notable winners were Al Arbor won this award way back in 1965, and Brian Engblom won it in 1977. That's my minor league hockey minute.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Some good history there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the college hockey, and very little to talk about there. We had the Frozen Four this past weekend. I actually missed the semifinal games because I had other commitments, but I did catch the the championship game, and that was hard to watch because at the same time that game was going on, there were 15 NHL games to watch.
Yeah.
That night, because it was the final day of the regular season for just about every team in the NHL. So I had that game on while trying to watch all those NHL games. So, but I did catch the championship game, and congratulations goes out to the University of Minnesota Duluth for winning their second national championship. And
Yep.
I believe both of them came on the same ice at XL Energy Center. I think I remember someone saying that. So they beat Notre Dame 2-1 in the championship game. Of course, we talked about last week. I personally wanted to see an Ohio State-Michigan game, but I didn't think that would happen. Pretty much what I thought would happen is that Notre Dame and Minnesota Duluth would advance to the final. And then Minnesota Duluth. I can't remember if I called a championship last week or not. But you folks can call me out if I did and got it wrong, or if I did and got it right.
Yeah, I think you. Yeah. No, Wayne, I'm not sure on that. You got this championship right. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, Minnesota Duluth beats Notre Dame in the championship game. So Minnesota Duluth, college hockey season's over, actually,
Yep.
at this point. So, and a lot of the players now are now starting to sign with their NHL teams.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, so that's all I had for the college hockey minute. There's really not much else to speak of. It was a fun tournament to watch. A lot of close games. That one was close as well. Although Minnesota Duluth had a 2-0 lead for a good chunk of that game. Notre Dame just couldn't quite score the tying goal in that one. Did you watch that game?
I watched part of the end of this. I didn't watch much of that game, and I watched the second period where Notre Dame came back strong, scored a goal in that period, and made it 2-1. And I can't remember why I switched away from that game and I couldn't get back to it. But needless to say, woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, God. But I did see a part of it.
Yeah. So anyway, let's hope next season my team, the University of Maine Black Bears, come back out and make improvements on what they did this year. They might actually have a chance of making the tournament next year if they improve.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, right?
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Let's call that season done, and let's move on to our picks of the week. I think that's all we got left, isn't it?
I think you're right, Wayne.
All right.
Yep.
All right. And you gave me one, and I don't remember what it was. I didn't write it into the show notes.
Mine is on the Hart Trophy. A great article yesterday by Dan Rosen for NHL.com regarding the Hart Trophy race and how it's come down to the wire. And I had a quick question, Wayne.
Yeah.
In his article, he made no mention of Patrick Laine as a potential winner of the Hart Trophy. Why is that?
Because good question. This year it's so hard to pick. There could be 10, 15 players that could potentially win it.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that Connor McDavid is very much a favorite. He won the Art Ross, but a lot of people don't believe that Connor McDavid should be considered, just simply because Edmonton had such a bad season,
Right.
and didn't make the playoffs. But a lot of people are going to pick him anyway. I would definitely put Laine in the conversation. That's for sure.
Yeah. Don't know that, I guess, the Hart Trophy, I don't know. It's something that who was the most valuable player to their team.
I mean, for me, it's Taylor Hall, because he was way ahead of everybody else on his team in terms of points. And he basically put his team on his back and carried them into the playoffs.
good, strong case can be made for him. I agree. I
Yep.
agree.
But I don't know if he'll even get nominated.
Well, here's what they say. The Hart Trophy race comes down to the wire. To mark the end of the 2017-18 regular season, NHL is running its final installment of the Trophy Tracker series this week. Today, they take a look at the race for the Hart Trophy. This is a really good article. It's not too long. Nathan MacKinnon arrived in the NHL as an 18-year-old, the number one pick in the 2013 NHL draft, a star in the making. He is made. He is a star. And MacKinnon in the Colorado Avalanche's top center is NHL.com's choice to win the Hart Trophy as the player judged most valuable to his team this season. MacKinnon was named on 16 of 17 ballots and received 62 points, pushed by 7 first-place votes, which are worth 5 points apiece in NHL.com's Hart Trophy vote. He finished 5th in the league in scoring with 97 points, 39 goals, and 58 assists. He had a great year. In 74 games, it's the most points by an Avalanche player since Joe Sakic finished with 100 in 2006 and 7. MacKinnon is the first Avalanche player to finish in the top 5 in scoring since Sakic in 03-04. MacKinnon was second in the league in points per game, 1.31, behind Edmonton Oilers center Connor McDavid at 1.32, who won the Art Ross Trophy with 108 points. In addition, MacKinnon finished tied for first in the league with 12 game-winning goals, which also tied Sakic's Avalanche record, which he set in 2000-2001. Put it all together, and MacKinnon is easily the biggest reason the Avalanche went from last in the NHL last season with 48 points to being in the Stanley Cup playoffs this season with 95 points, good enough to be the second wildcard team in the Western Conference. Colorado will face the Nashville Predators in the Western Conference first-round game 1 at the Bridgestone Arena on Thursday. It's just his mentality of wanting to be a leader on his team and wanting to drive the bus every time he gets on the ice, being aggressive with the puck, making things happen. Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog said, "It's been a lot of fun to watch. The player he is and the season he's having, in my eyes, he's the MVP. The best part of MacKinnon's production this season excuse me, is that he was at the best when the Avalanche needed him most, such as Saturday, when they had to defeat the St. Louis Blues in regulation to make the playoffs. MacKinnon scored the game-winning goal at 16:58 of the second period, contributed an assist, played 23 minutes and 30 seconds time on ice, and had 6 shots on goal with 11 shot attempts and 2 block shots. The Avalanche won 5-2. I knew what was going on. I wanted to be aggressive," MacKinnon said, "and I thought I could be." MacKinnon dominated by Pepsi Center with the league-high 67 points, 27 goals, 40 assists in home games, tying Sakic's record again for home points, which he set in 2000-2001. He pushed the Avalanche into the playoff discussion with 19 points, 8 goals, 11 assists during Colorado's 10-game winning streak from December 29th to January 22nd. He had 26 points, 12 goals, and 14 assists during a 14-game point streak from February 24th to March 22nd, the longest of his NHL career. The Avalanche went 8-3-3. He had a tendency in the past to get frustrated if things didn't go his way or the team's way early on. Avalanche coach Jared Bednar said, Now he has the stick-to-itiveness to his game, with a commitment to his game to continue to play the right way, and it's making all the difference in the world, especially late in the hockey game. That's why he's been a difference maker for us. MacKinnon struggled to be the difference maker down the stretch with 3 points, all assists in 7 games from March 24th to April 5th. However, when the Avalanche needed their star to step up in the regular season finale, he delivered. He's taking it to another level, Avalanche defenseman Tyson Barrie said. Voting totals. This is interesting. Voting totals. Points awarded on a 5-4-3-2-1 basis. Nathan MacKinnon of the Avalanche had 62 points, 7 first-place votes. Taylor Hall of the New Jersey Devils finished second with 54 points, 3 first-place votes. Anze Kopitar of the Los Angeles Kings finished third with 43 points and 3 first-place votes. Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning was fourth with 26 points and 2 first-place votes. Claude Giroux, which I've heard a lot of talk of that name lately in terms of Hart Trophy Philadelphia Flyers had 18. Evgeny Malkin, you got to put him up there.
Yep.
Evgeny Malkin of Pittsburgh had 15. Connor McDavid down the list a little ways, but he had 15 points, one first-place vote. Blake Wheeler of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, that's where I don't understand why they're not putting Patrick Laine in. They got Blake Wheeler in here.
Maybe that's why Wheeler and Laine are splitting votes.
Could be.
Along with Bufflin, too.
Alex Ovechkin of Washington, 8, one first-place vote. Artemi Panarin of Columbus had 1 vote. Brad Marchand of the Bruins had 1. And Steven Stamkos of the Tampa Bay Lightning had 1. So I thought it was a real good article, could promote a good discussion. I can't argue with Nathan MacKinnon if he wins it.
No, you can't. He's a good candidate as well. I mean, there's a bunch of good candidates this year. There's no clear-cut winner this time around.
I agree. It's going to be hard for them to pick a guy. Yep. It really is. I could see Claude Giroux, who had 100 points. In fact, I think he had 101 hat trick in the last game.
Yep.
Against the Rangers, as being somebody who might finish in the top 3. So it's going to be a very interesting series, very interesting vote on that one indeed. The Hart Trophy winner this year is going to be a guy that hasn't won it. I don't think you're going to see Connor McDavid win it this year.
No, I don't think. He's had a great season, first overall in points, but he's, the fact that his team didn't make the playoffs should knock him down a few spots. There are more deserving players, and I think the Hart Trophy should come from at one of the current playoff teams.
I agree.
Because being in the playoffs means that you've had a successful season. Missed the playoffs, your season wasn't successful as a team. So, anyway. All right. That is all we have for tonight's podcast.
You have your pick of the week?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I got to hear it, Wayne.
Yep.
I got to hear yours.
Yep. And I just had the article up. And I put it away because for some reason I thought we were done. All right. Mine is the Ducks players gifted a fishing boat to their equipment manager who's retiring at the end of this season.
Oh, this is a great one.
Yep. And the article is from NHL.com. No specific author on this article, but it reads as follows. If you are looking for retiring Anaheim Ducks equipment manager Doug Sluggo Shearer after the completion of the season, he'll be on a boat, his very own boat, and not a duck boat, but rather a Ducks boat. Ducks players, spearheaded by defenseman Francois Beauchemin, arranged for the sweet retirement gift for Shearer after his 34 years of service. The setup for the surprise was simple. Well, it was simple after everyone involved realized the boat would fit through the Zamboni doors while towed by a pickup truck. With the boat at center ice prior to Ducks practice, Beauchemin would ask Shearer to adjust his visor. When the longtime equipment manager returned, the defenseman would then ask Sluggo to please remove his boat from the ice so the team could practice. The reaction was great, Beauchemin told NHL.com. First thing he told me was he was speechless. He didn't really believe it. Shearer's reaction was priceless. After he realized that this was not a joke, this was an actual retirement gift, Beauchemin escorted Shearer to his new pride and joy and got a team picture with the guys. He knew it would be a gift where he would be surprised, and he's going to really enjoy it because we all know he loves fishing, Beauchemin said. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of fun on that boat. So, and there's pictures on the website, pictures and a short video of the team, surrounded around the boat with the equipment manager inside the boat. It's a nice boat too.
Yeah, that is an unbelievable gift, a great gift.
Yep.
To give him, man, that is unbelievable.
Yep, gifted from the players.
That is. Man, what a great gift they gave him.
Yep.
And there's a picture of it in NHL.com?
Yeah, on the article. And I will put, I don't think I did, but I will put a link to that article in the show notes just so you can click on it if you so choose. Oh, I already did. So that's in there. So yeah, it's a maroon colored boat, real nice fishing boat. but he served 34 years in the NHL, 2,848 NHL games, and the last 11 of his years were with the Ducks. And you know, the guys that play in the league really love their equipment managers. Those guys are the behind the scenes. They're the guys that keep everything running, and they work hard. All those equipment managers. Yeah. So when the guys recognize that and reward them for a job well done, it's always a great story to see.
Agreed.
Because they work harder than even the players do in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of long hours it takes to be an equipment manager.
Yeah.
Because when the games are over, that's when those guys start their job, getting the team prepared for the next game, whether it be loading up the bus, loading up the truck, the equipment truck, getting everything over to the airport, or, you know, sharpening 20 guys' skates. I mean, it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
A lot of long hours those guys do. So kudos to him for being recognized.
Very much.
All right.
So.
Now we're done.
Yes, I think we got it all put together this week, Wayne.
It's a long one this week, and at times difficult, but we got through it, and we are looking forward to the start of the playoffs. And just a quick check of the scores as of right now. Penguins are up 2-0 already on Philadelphia. Oh, make that 3. They just scored another one.
Good gracious.
So Philadelphia, I think they came out and they looked like they were outplaying Pittsburgh for a little bit there, but Pittsburgh seems to be finding the back of the net while Philadelphia is struggling. So it's looking like, at least right now, Pittsburgh's going to take game 1. But the other game, Minnesota-Winnipeg, that's underway is still scoreless, about halfway through the first. Wow. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up so we can both go out and watch these games.
Yes, sir.
Because we've got a lot of hockey to watch in the coming weeks and couple months ahead. So until next week, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. And I guess that's it for this week. And we'll see you next week, Steve.
Wayne, take care. Good talking to you again this week. You have a good week.
All right. You too. All right. Good night.
Good night. That's going to be a good one. That's going to be a really good one.
Yep.
You know, I kept thinking Barry Melrose. Barry Melrose is from Saskatchewan. I wonder how he.
I think I saw an interview with him. Yeah, he's taken that one pretty hard too.
Yeah. That. Oh gosh. Like I said, I got a news flash on my cell phone when it happened, and I didn't know about it. The next morning, I woke up and there it was.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't know Vigneault was let go. You were the one who notified me of that.
Yeah, I happened to be up that night, and they had just announced it that night.
You know, he did his press conference after the game. They did not fire him at that point.
No, it didn't come out till like 11 o'clock later that night.
Yeah. So obviously they had talks with him after the game, and after the game, and everything was concluded there in Philadelphia. So, anyways, I wonder how they do something like that, Wayne. And I know we're going to go watch these games, but okay, so you're the coach. Your team loses in Philadelphia.
Yep.
And they fire you after the game. I would doubt that they do. Well, maybe they did. Maybe they waited for the team to get back to New York and then fired him.
That might be.
Because if they fired him in Philadelphia, they wouldn't let him on the team bus or something, would they? I'm sure they wouldn't. He'd have to find other arrangements to get home.
I'm sure they would make arrangements for him to get back home, but no, where that was just a short flight from Philly back to New York. It probably, because it came out, or maybe they did it on the plane.
Yeah,
I don't know if Jeff Gordon was traveling with them or not. I'm not sure how that works. Yeah. Or they might have done it prior to the last game and just announced it after the game was over.
Yeah.
with the fact that, they would announce it once the plane was airborne. I don't know how that works. Usually they do it on an off day. They don't do a day of the game like that. But in this case, they did it right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that an afternoon game? That was an afternoon game, wasn't it?
Game. It was the NBC game of the week.
Yeah, it had to have happened. They must have flown back to New York because it didn't get announced till like 11 o'clock that night after all the games were done.
Yeah.
That's when it broke on my Twitter feed, is when Twitter went nuts when my Twitter feed went crazy when that got announced.
Yeah.
So that's probably what happened. They got back to New York. Once they were back in the city, Gorton probably had a meeting with him.
Yeah.
Because it would take some time between the meeting and then the official announcement coming out. You know what I mean? It wouldn't happen immediately.
Right.
So they probably had a meeting when they got back to New York, and of course, Vigneault probably knew it was coming, so it's probably no surprise to him. But
I think he knew it was coming, Wayne. I really thought that when they decided to break up the team, that he was at least going to survive through the end of the season, because the management was the ones who made the decision to break up the team. I don't think he made that decision at all. So
yeah,
but
no, that wouldn't have been Vigneault's decision. Oh, it's getting ugly already in Philly.
I gotta break up and go watch that game, man. But good talking to you. I'm anxious to hear this podcast. This is going to be a very good one.
So yeah, it should be. I'm probably not going to throw any highlights in front of this one. I might actually even include they had a vigil right before. They had a vigil on Sunday at the arena where the Humboldt Broncos play.
Oh wow!
I might include they read off all the names. I might include just the readings of the names and leave it at that with no highlights whatsoever. I think that's how I'm going to do it. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty somber start to the podcast, but we'll go from there.
You did good. That was really good. How you very good.
So all right,
okay,
let's
Wayne,
go watch some hockey.
Have a good week.
All right, you too.
Take it easy. Take care.